Welcome back, warriors.
Yes, we are so excited to be with you all today.
Yay. We are talking about social anxiety today. This is a huge one. Huge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, so many things go into being socially anxious.
Yes. Yeah. There's so much we could talk about. We could do this for weeks.
And we will. No, just kidding.
We'll find a way to just talk about social anxiety. Then we could talk about social media anxiety, right? Like we could find many ways.
It's true because there's so many different ways to be social, right? It's not just person to person, face to face, one person to another person. It's whole groups of people. It's when you're presenting to people, it's new people, friends you've known for years. It's just so much.
It's across the board. Social anxiety with many different people shows up in many different ways.
That's it, guys. Woohoo! Podcast over.
We nailed it.
Good luck, y'all. All right. So we're going to spend some time thinking about and remembering how social anxiety shows up in our lives or showed up in our lives, how we have navigated it, and maybe a little bit on how it's affected us as far as like with technology, social anxiety on Zoom or in social media versus in person.
Yeah.
So Abby, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. So hi, I'm socially anxious. I have social anxiety and I've only just started claiming that part of me. It definitely helps me when I say it to feel actually less socially anxious. But so let's see, I feel like, again, like we said before, most of my life, I didn't know what I had with social anxiety. So I was told that I was shy, but it was very confusing for me because I wasn't always shy. Meeting new people, even as like a kid, I would hide behind my mom's legs. But in school and in college and everything, that shyness was only when I was first like meeting people or being in a group. And once I figured out like the dynamic, I appeared more extroverted, even though inside I had a ton of anxiety. So before I knew I had anxiety or social anxiety, before I knew I had anxiety and social anxiety, I really feared large groups. Large groups actually still make me uncomfortable now, but now I can like name it. I am a short person. I am 5'1", and being in large groups of people where I can be pushed around a lot creates a lot of anxiety for me, even thinking about it.
You weren't in any like mosh pits in high school?
No, never. Never. No.
Those are scary places to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Like when Dan and I go to concerts, I'm like, yo, you got to like stand near me. Like I get elbows in the head. I get elbows in the face because I'm 5'1" and I'm petite and I get pushed around a lot. And so large groups, it's a threat. It causes
a literal physical threat.
Yeah. But it also appeared, when like my friend would invite me to a party where there was a bunch of people that I didn't know, it was like nervousness, but I didn't know why I was nervous. I would always have to know who was there and what kind of people they were and how many people were going to be in that space. Sometimes when I was invited to things, I just wouldn't go. I'd bail because I didn't understand why I didn't want to go, but it felt exhausting or overwhelming before even going to these, parties or hangouts and stuff. Also, just like I said before, is, meeting new people, aside from feeling the anxiety, there's like a deep fear of appearing stupid or appearing, just not who I was. So I was always afraid of how people were going to receive me and if they were going to get the real me or not, so I was afraid of other people's judgment. So before I knew I had anxiety, I would do a lot of stuff like I would drink. Like I drank a lot in college, and I was drinking a lot in college because it was constantly new people and going out in big groups. And it was such an overwhelming experience in my body, and there was so much fear in my mind that I would drink to alleviate that discomfort. I said like I would avoid crowds and stuff, but sometimes I would get roped into going into stuff. And so some of the things that I did when I would go to parties where I didn't know a lot of people, my go-to moves were I would find the pets or the kids and hang out with them. And I would pretend to be distracted with the kids so that if like people tried to talk to me, I had an out. And I always felt more comfortable with kids anyway. It's like probably why I'm a kids yoga teacher. Kids are super fun. But it was also a way for me to manage my social anxiety with meeting new people. Another thing that I would really, practice, and I still kind of do this, even though I know I have social anxiety now. Another thing that I would practice a lot is I learned the art of asking other people all about them.
Mm.
So, one of the ways that social anxiety would come up for me in a variety of different situations was instead of me talking about me, which caused a lot of anxiety, I would ask people all about them. And people like talking about themselves. So, it was able to shine the light away from me, but also like I look personable, I look extroverted, but it was all coping with my social anxiety and how to be around other people. So it wasn't until I would say like my mid 20s that I learned that what I was experiencing was social anxiety. Um, but another way that it really shows up for me now with my awareness around it is that um, it shows up on like social media, like we were talking about, right? And it goes back to that like connecting with people on social media where I can't get social cues of how they're receiving me makes me feel extremely insecure and afraid of being judged.
Mm.
You can't hear my tone of voice when I'm leaving a comment, right? You can't hear my
Right.
tone of voice when I'm sharing something. Um, Also, when I share something and like no one responds or likes or comments, I feel very raw and vulnerable and like anxious, like, oh my God, I just put this out there and no one is responding to it, right? So, like, social anxiety for me just comes up, in all these different ways. But what really helped me was in, I guess, first was the being able to label it, right? But that didn't really get rid of all of the discomfort on the inside. It's just like, okay, I have social anxiety and I
But
sweat
now
a
what?
lot and I talk really fast because I'm anxious and like I do all of these things. But the other thing that happened was in my early 30s, um, I I was told like to be a really good mindfulness teacher, you should take an improv class. And I was like, that sounds like the most terrible, terrifying, awful thing in the world for my social anxiety. I should probably do it. And so I started taking improv. And what I will say is it actually helped me with public speaking, right? I didn't even talk at all about public speaking, but that was another way that social anxiety came up for me, right? To perform in front of others and deliver information to them. Um, but improv really helped me in the like being able to pay attention to the people that I'm speaking with and being able to add onto the conversation, that yes anding, which
Mm.
is a little bit deeper than the word yes and, right? But what it allowed was for this dynamic conversation, um, where it was at least me and others participating, and it wasn't one sided where I was just deflecting and asking other people questions. And
Right.
so that has been like a really powerful tool that I use now, along with just like communicating when I'm feeling anxious and, getting like asking questions about what to expect so I can prepare myself for my social anxiety.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just want to say like all the same things you said. There's, I mean, not all, but a lot of them. Like I definitely resonated, especially with being labeled as shy as a kid.
Yeah.
And it's like I was labeled as shy as a kid too. But then conversely, when I was on stage, because I grew up dancing, I didn't feel shy at all. I
Yeah.
was like, and maybe part of it is because you're being seen, but you're not being seen because it's not just you up there. You're up
Mm-hmm.
there with, your classmates and your fellow dancers.
Yes.
And so there's a sense of community and but it didn't bother me. There was a sense of like everyone's over there and I'm over here, so I'm safe,
Yeah.
right? But I didn't really think about it as like, well, I guess I wasn't really shy. I was just more afraid to have like more interpersonal relationships or interactions
Mm-hmm.
with folks.
Yeah.
And I just love that you kind of freely and willingly opened up about like what years later when you were in college and you sort of used alcohol as a means of protecting you from like
Mm-hmm.
having your senses be dulled in that way allows you
Yes.
to be freer, right? That's why they say like your inhibitions are lowered when you
Mm-hmm.
are a little bit buzzed or tipsy. And that's why a lot of people, I think, turn to external things like those types of
Yeah.
substances to help alleviate one feeling or another. It may not even be anxiety, right? But I just think it's an important part of what you said. And so I value you bringing that up because I think it's highly relatable
Yeah.
um, for a lot of people out there who experience social anxiety, especially at that time of your life. It's very, very tricky to going through so many transitions and
Right.
finding
Right.
yourself and who you really want to be as an emerging adult.
I mean, that's so it. It's like, if you're going off to school and you're leaving home, right? And you are like your adolescent brain is starting to become more adult, you are starting to figure out really who you are and your place in this world. That like external anxiety is a lot. And then you're like interacting with all these people and in my college, I went to one school for 3 years and I never felt part of the community.
Mm.
Um, it was a school that a lot of rich kids went to, and I was not rich. And I remember like being teased because I didn't know what a Prada bag was. Yeah. Margot just made a
Jeez.
really funny face.
Big eye roll from me.
Yeah. And like people were driving like BMWs and Mustangs, and I had like a 1992 like standard Subaru, right?
Woohoo!
Stick and everything. And like I mean I'm proud of all that, right? But my point is like we were from very different upbringings, and what was important to me was not important to a lot of my peers, right? And so I didn't feel connected with them. I felt like the weirdo who cared about deeper stuff. Which actually that is another part of my social anxiety, is the fear of connecting with people in groups and just having superficial conversation. Like
Mm.
superficial conversation, talking about the weather or just like not having deep meaningful conversation creates a lot of anxiety in me. And so yeah, so like I mean, like the superficial conversation of like you and I seeing each other and like, hey, how are you? Like that's not superficial to me. That's like connecting. But when it's with strangers that I don't know and they leave it in a very like heady, non-emotional like
Yeah.
place for them, it gives me so much anxiety to just like stay in the superficial.
Huh.
Yeah. So that comes
Let
up a
me
lot
ask you a
actually.
follow-up question about that because that's so
Yeah.
interesting. And I kind of have some notes of that too in my own experience. But uh, when you are, say, having a superficial conversation with somebody that you don't know or you don't know really well, and you're not sure whether or not to continue that superficial
Mm-hmm.
conversation or to exit the conversation, do you ever decide to take it deeper? Or are you waiting for the other person to take it deeper or not?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the first thing is always it depends. But for me, ultimately, I get bored in the superficial. And I also can I blame my ADD? Like I have ADD and like my mind will start wandering if people aren't interesting to me. And
Mm.
I don't mean that in a mean way at all, but there's only so much I can hear like about your job if you're not going to tell me how you feel about your job, right? Like it doesn't have to be
Ah.
super deep. I don't need your deepest darkest secrets, right? But I need to feel like we connect at a human level, and so I'll usually ask certain questions to see if they're willing to go deeper, and if not, I'll try to find a way to like get out of the conversation.
Yeah, but that's powerful because you know that about yourself, right?
Oh
And
gosh,
you've
yeah.
reached a place where you understand that you're not interested in having superficial relationships with folks.
Yeah.
And that's incredibly empowering that you have embraced the agency that you have to say, "Is this one of my people? Okay,
Yeah.
well, I'm gonna dip my toe out and find out, and if they are, great, then we can move forward and future connect, but if not, then that's okay. We're on different paths and move on."
That's
So
it.
I
And
love that. It's so empowering.
I don't think of it as beautifully as you. I'm like, oh my God, I'm having so much anxiety being with this person. I need to go. But your way is also
Good reframe for you
yeah,
on that.
very good reframe. Yeah.
The other thing too, which you said that deeply resonated, was talking to avoidance a little bit, talking to pets and kids.
Yes.
Because those are my comfort zones too, right? This is why we spend so many years as teachers and spend so many years educating children. And we both have doggies at home. And because it's an avoidance coping tool to say,
Yeah.
like, all these other grown-ups or all these other people are too much for me right now. And so I'm going to go where I feel safe, which is
Right.
to people that are either one, they're not emotionally or developmentally on the same level as you are, right? They're
Yeah.
little kids or they're pets, certainly. And yeah, I mean, that I could totally resonate with that feeling. I've done that
Yeah.
many times. I guess I'm proud to say it's been a while since I've had to do that.
Right.
But then again, we've been living through a global pandemic. And so some of that social anxiety has changed a lot this year.
Yes. Oh gosh. I mean, that's another episode is how has social
Yeah,
anxiety
we're not going to
changed?
get into that
No,
today. That's no time
no,
for that.
no, no, but you're right. It's like it's connecting with children and pets. Like for me, one, it was definitely a coping strategy. Um, two, I felt like I could be me. Like, when you're with kids, like you can be a playful version of yourself, or you can
Yeah.
be whatever it is, but you can be an authentic version of yourself. Right. I didn't feel like I had to like protect myself or my,
Mm.
against children. So, um,
Right, for fear of being judged or like I'm being
yes,
too vulnerable.
right. And then I can also be playful and it's like, oh, she's playing with the kids rather than like, oh,
Right.
shouldn't she act older? Or like whatever the fear of the judgment is, you know?
Yes. And
Yeah.
just touching on what you said about social media too, I think that so many people can relate to that. And I think it's part of the problem with the tunnel that is social media is that you put stuff out there and you don't know how it's being perceived. You don't know how those
Yeah.
comments are being read on the other side. You don't know if you're resonating with anybody and if they're not giving you those like dopamine hits, right? Because
Yeah.
like sadly, some of us, and I know I go through this, it's like we wrap up our self-worth in what other people are, how they're appreciating or not responding to what I'm putting out to the world on social media. So I could see why that would be a big social anxiety factor for a lot
It's
of people.
it's huge. So I appreciate you reflecting that because I do feel like a weirdo. I feel like, oh, who cares? Like I did not start Instagram because I wanted to. Like I was told I had to through a job. And I've just started to like try to connect, and I love how you like look at it as a community, right? And I'm trying to. Yeah.
Yes, I do. I didn't start an Instagram because of I wanted to either. It was because of work. Um, my relationship to it has changed a lot since the pandemic started, and so
Yeah.
yeah, maybe I'll bring that up when I share my stuff. But um, it's still a tricky environment to navigate.
Yeah.
It's definitely a different form of being social, right?
Right.
It's just complete. It's social, but it's not social at the same
Right.
time.
Right.
This weird paradox.
So I'm excited to hear yours, but I want to share something first. So I was feeling a little anxious sharing about my social anxiety at the beginning. I can't fully explain why, right?
Mm,
Um, I think that social anxiety is still something that I've very much tried to overcome a lot and pretend I don't have. So
mhm.
giving voice to it definitely makes me feel a little uncomfortable. So when I was sharing, I felt very kind of scattered. So but I just want to say by sharing it, I actually now like I feel like I've dropped more into my body, and
Mm.
so this just sharing about my social anxiety and having you reflect was really supportive in this moment.
Yeah, I'm glad, and I think giving voice to all the ways in which human beings experience anxiety is helpful.
Yeah.
or at least it's helpful for me too. So, and hopefully for all the warriors listening, that's why they're here, because they're seeking a little bit of community and knowing they're not alone,
Right.
and
Right.
some validation for their own lived experiences.
Yeah. So
Uh,
let's validate even more and hear your story.
Yeah, so much of mine is was similar to at least how you notice it in the beginning. I do feel like overall, if I had to look at it from afar, I notice a lot of contrast in my social anxiety. It's very much like a magnet. It's a push pull, and it
Mhm.
changes from moment to moment. And there isn't really any one scenario that will cause me more or less
Yeah.
anxiety than another.
Yeah.
For example, like I might be about to lead a class or host a workshop, even if I've done it 1,000 times, but my feelings about it will be different every time.
Mhm.
Um, and I also consider myself to be an introverted extrovert,
Mhm. Yep.
which for me means that in my mind, I want to be seen and heard and to connect with others. But depending on the situation or the type of gathering, or even just my current mood or state of being, I may not feel safe enough to share or open up or approach people I don't
Yeah.
know. And I think a lot of that, again, it's a common theme for me. It really stems from the environment that I'm in, the space that I'm in. It's not
Yeah.
even so much about the people. Sometimes it is, or even a lot of the times,
Huh.
but it's about how big the room is, how noisy the room is, what the lights are like. A lot of my senses affect my
Wow.
social anxiety as well. Uh, and so let's say I'm at a huge gathering with total strangers. I'm going to tell a story about that specific thing in a minute. If I'm feeling brave, I'll approach one person.
Yes.
And usually that person seems to be or appears to be exhibiting similar behaviors and body language that I am, or at
Yes.
least that I assume that I'm putting out there. But not a whole group. So, like, if I look over and there's a whole group of people standing together, chatting, whether they know each other or knew each other ahead of time or not,
Mhm.
I'm not going to go approach that group and be like, hey, everyone, my name's Margot. Let me introduce myself and get involved in this conversation. That's never going to happen unless I'm drunk. And
Yes.
that's happened
Yep.
before too. Just being real. So yeah, I'll approach that one person. But then once, let's say I'm brought into the fold, that more extroverted side of me will emerge. And then I'm super chatty and I'm listening and I'm making jokes and I'm asking questions. And I really resonated with that part too of your story where you said that like it was part of your safety mechanism to deflect and not talk about yourself,
Yeah.
but ask the other person.
Yep.
And so kind of converse, that would happen to me sometimes, but conversely, I'm super interested in learning about a person. And
Yes.
so I'm asking the questions because I really want to know. Otherwise, I'm not going to ask the question.
Mhm.
So it's not really a coping mechanism for me in those moments. It's more of like once I'm engaged and I'm in the fold and I feel like my nervous system feels safe and soothed in
Yes.
that moment,
Yes.
then I'm able to be myself more and quicker. Um, Basically, I need to feel warm. I need to feel warmed up. We know that we're all sweaty all the time. So I don't
Yes.
feel physically warm, but I need to feel warmed up in any environment in order to fully be myself. So ahead of
Mm.
time, I would, or sometimes I still do, I'm scanning a lot of faces. Or sometimes I'm just looking down a lot. I'm looking at my hands. I
Mhm.
notice a lot of like clenching in my fists. That's always a big tell for me if I'm feeling socially anxious, is if like I notice a tenseness in my hands and it's like, okay, Margot, like let's just go ahead and release those hands, you know.
Yeah.
And then some of my strategies is to like shake them out a little bit, even if I look insane from across the room.
Yeah.
That's what I'll do. Yeah, but I would do a lot of that same stuff, avoiding eye contact. And then
Mhm.
here was a big one for me. And this is partly the story I'm going to tell in a second. If I see groups of people and they are all chatting and talking and I'm by myself,
Yeah.
immediately my mind goes to, oh, they're talking about me.
Yeah.
They're commenting on my outfit.
Yeah.
They don't like my face,
Mhm.
like something. And usually I would assume because they haven't talked to me yet that it's something about my external self
Mhm.
that they're laughing at me or they have something
Right.
bad to say, which I have to hopefully assume is never the case because
Right.
nobody's looking at you and thinking about you in the way that you're looking at you and thinking about
Right.
yeah. And so like the story I'm going to tell is about it just happened this past end of the summer,
Mhm.
and I was at this outdoor marketing event. I'm not marketing, sorry, networking event.
Okay.
And it's all these small women in business here on Long Island where I live. and it was my first time going. And I knew that a couple people that I know on a
Mhm.
professional level and somewhat of a friendly level now were going to be at this event. But I got there, as I do, early. And so it was kind of quiet. And neither of these women showed up until like over an hour later. And so I was kind of just like standing alone, like with
Oh.
my drink and like looking around. And there's all these women talking to each other and they're all like dressed up and looking gorgeous. And there's like a photo booth and all this stuff. And I'm just like, I just wanted to like run or like there, the ocean was
Yes.
right there. I just want to like jump in the ocean and be like,
Yes.
I'm gonna go. Oh, I don't feel good. And like make up an excuse and be like, I got to get out of here. Right. That avoidance part of me would come up or did come
Mhm.
up. Uh, and so then it was just kind of like, I just like sat in a chair. I was like, oh, there's chairs being set up. Like, I'm going to go sit in a chair, be by myself. Right. And then slowly people started migrating over to the chairs. And then someone sat down next to me. And I was like, okay, there's one person sitting next to me.
Yeah.
Perfect. So then I went up talking to that person and we warmed up to each other and we got to know each other's work and all that stuff. And then slowly more people came and filtered. And part of the event was that they were having speakers present.
Mhm.
And so that's obviously easy peasy because I'm just sitting there and listening. I don't have to
Right.
engage. And then at that point, like my friends had showed up and it was fine.
Right.
But all of that leading up to it, it was like, I'm a woman in business. I am somebody who's in her late 30s. I know myself. I know my tools. I know my strategies. I know the
Mhm.
type of personality that I have. And yet here I am in this unfamiliar environment. And now I'm like, it's like starting fresh. I feel like a
Yes.
5-year-old again.
Yes. Yes. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. So, all right, there are so many things that I want to say. The first is like how you just said, like, I have all my tools, I'm this age, I'm this professional, I'm this, and I still feel like a 5-year-old. I just heard this quote the other day that, I mean, I've heard it a lot of times, but it stuck the other day. It was like, we don't experience things as they are, we experience them as they were in the past.
Mm,
Right. And so, like, maybe you were that 5-year-old that didn't know anyone at some point. Um, wow, I just got a flashback of me being a kid and being bullied by older kids. I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe that caused my social anxiety. Okay.
ah,
Yeah, right. Because we don't experience things as they are. We experience them from a lens of the
right.
past. Um, I can so relate to all of that, right? I feel like I would go find a chair and like pretend to do work on my phone or something like,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was texting Adam for like the first hour. He could
Yeah,
definitely be like, I was like, I'm like, just be on standby right now. I'm like, we're
right.
gonna be texting until my friends show up.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I'm going to pretend I'm doing some important stuff right now.
And he was good again, like my secure attachment.
He's like, I got you.
Yes, he was there
Yeah.
sending me funny gifts and we were chatting about one thing or another. So yeah, having that support definitely helps.
But the other thing, I mean, there's something else too, but the other thing that, right before your story where you're sharing how one of your things is maybe you'll find when there's a group of people, there's that one person on the outskirts and you'll talk to them. Like, I totally relate to that. You just find like that one person and you're like, hey, so I'm Abby. Like, are we cool? Are we cool?
Yeah.
And I feel like, a lot of people with social anxiety can probably relate to either one, being the person on the outside, like playing on your phone, waiting for your friends to come, or two, finding that one person and being like, okay, I'll give you my time and my energy right now. And
Yeah.
let's see if this is a
Let's
match.
see, right? Or even just to like get through this, right? Because even if we're
Yeah.
not going to have any kind of networked relationship past this evening, it's like, but you're going to help me and I'm going to help you survive the next 15
Yes.
minutes of our
Yes.
lives, right? And that's
Yes.
okay.
That's
Yeah. So
so
some of the
right.
stuff that I did and do is like I practice testing my own boundaries and comfort zones with people when I'm in
Mhm.
different environments. I am honest about when I look around a space and I feel like it's mentally or sensory overload or too much stimulation with my
Mhm.
senses, I'm able to sort of like gauge like, okay, this is probably what I may experience through this,
Yeah.
through this time. And it may not be the case, and sometimes it's not. Uh, and now, if I'm in it, I know because I know that I've been on the outskirts so many times. I know that if I'm, say, on the opposite end of the situation,
Mhm.
right, where like I'm super comfortable, everybody here knows me, they're we're connected, but I see someone who I've been in
Yes.
that position, my immediate instinct is like, let's bring that person into the fold.
Yes.
Let me leave what I'm doing and go talk to that person and
Right.
try to make them feel good, because
Right.
I know so much about what it feels
Mhm.
like to look and be a little bit out of place or feel
Yep.
lost in a situation. And so that came from lots of years and still currently practicing self-compassion. And then
Mhm.
just remembering too, this is something I've said many times and we've said, is that I have agency. I am a 38-year-old. I can decide that I don't want to stay in a situation. I can
Yeah.
get back in my car and leave.
Yep.
And then, is that the brave thing to do? Maybe, right? It really depends on the situation. Maybe the brave
Right.
thing is to stay and to live and sit with that discomfort and find people to talk to and to be
Yeah.
with and to connect with. Or maybe it's, you know what? It's okay that I need to leave this situation. I'm going to own that,
Right. Why do we
right?
have to like force ourselves into some situation that we're extremely uncomfortable in when we can just leave?
I got to tell a quick story now. And we know that, and this isn't about me, but it's about Glennon Doyle's book, Untamed. Again,
Yeah.
that's just forever quoting. There's this short chapter where she's was talking to a friend who went to a hot yoga class. And
Yes.
immediately
I
she did you read that chapter?
did. I did.
Immediately she realized it's too hot in here. I gotta go. I don't want to be here. But she felt that social pressure to
Mhm.
stay and suffer through class. And then like
Yes.
the last line of the chapter is like the door wasn't even locked. Like
Right.
she got outside after the class was over and she could breathe again and feel alive and feel safe and happy. And she was like, why did I stay? Right after the
Yeah.
fact. Sometimes we learn after the fact. Why did I stay? The door wasn't even locked.
Right.
Right.
Right. And I mean that is such a powerful story, but I feel like all of us have that aha moment at some point. Like, why did I force myself to be in something that was so uncomfortable? And like you were saying, there is a spectrum and a range. Like I chose to do a 10-day silent retreat Vipassana, knowing it was going to be uncomfortable. And it was, but I made that choice knowing it was going to be uncomfortable.
Right.
Right. But then there's sometimes where like it's just too overwhelming. Why stay in a hot yoga class where you think you're going to like vomit and faint? Why not just leave?
Mm-hmm.
But that's another story about yoga
Yeah.
classes and pressure and all that. Like,
Yes. Oh, absolutely. For sure. And as yoga teachers, I'm sure we have lots
yeah.
of those. But like you said too about your stuff, when you were talking about how it was suggested to you that you try improv and you knew that
Mm-hmm.
that was probably going to be a terrible, horrible
Yeah.
experience and I should definitely try it,
Yeah.
do it. And so like, that's kind of where I land too. It's like, you can gently and sometimes jump. We've talked about comfort zones before,
Mm-hmm.
but like be in the discomfort, test yourself, right? Find out, is this a hard line boundary for all
Yeah.
situations? Or is this a situation to situation difference, right? Can I
Yeah.
make it through this time? Are there things I can do to help myself to get through this social situation, right? Or maybe I do need to just grab my stuff and get out of there.
Right. And I like what you were saying about like giving yourself just like you know what, I'm going to try it for a half hour. I mean, you didn't say something that specific, but I'm going to go there and try it out, right? Like, and I'm going to give myself X amount of time to see how I feel. And if I hate it after an hour, I give myself permission to leave. Like you're pre-deciding
Right.
what you're going to do. Because I think that really helps too, is like to decide like, okay, is this super outside my comfort zone or is this a step outside? Or did my anxiety make me think it was going to be worse than it actually was? And so I allowed myself to do it and it wasn't so bad, you know? So I
Right.
like that, trying it out, but giving yourself permission to change your mind or to leave when you're there.
Yes. Yeah. Just always remembering, no matter what age and stage you're at, that there are choices
Yeah.
that you're in charge of. You can
Yeah.
make those choices. You can't necessarily choose the type of people that are going to be in the space with you, that are going to interact with you or avoid you or you avoid them or whatever the situation.
Mm-hmm.
But there are situations that you can say, okay, here's the next best thing,
Yeah.
right? Here's what I need right now.
Yeah. I love it.
I know. Oh my goodness. This is a deep one. I feel like it's like this is an ocean's worth of
Oh,
stuff we could
yeah.
probably talk about. And so just quickly on social media, like
Yeah.
I have a lot less anxiety on social media than you do. And I know we've
Yeah,
talked about
yeah.
this many
Yep.
times. And I think part of it is because I'm not seeing how people are reacting. It's like the opposite of you. It's like you're putting it out
Mm,
there, your anxious mind is telling you like, I don't know how I'm going to be perceived. Whereas for me, it's safer because I don't
mhm.
know how I'm going to be perceived.
Yeah.
But I still have less anxiety showing up there because it's me. I'm always myself. I'm
Yeah.
honest and open. But
Mhm.
at the same time, it's not necessarily my face or me talking. It's not
Right.
necessarily as in the moment. I can plan ahead of time what
Yeah.
I'm going to write and how it's read, and I can edit it and change
Mhm.
it around a little bit so I feel a little bit safer on social media. But that's because I feel like I've cultivated and I love cultivating community there. So it feels joyful for
Yeah.
me. And so I have
Yeah.
less anxiety surrounding it because it brings me joy.
Right. Right. And
And
you
hopefully that comes
appear
across. Yeah.
yeah, you appear joyful and that you appreciate your community. And I think just for me it's so funny because I've been talking about how I don't like large groups and stuff, but I think for me, like, being in person always feels better than being,
Oh,
because
definitely.
for social media, for me it's like, hey, I'm a small business and I feel like I have to constantly remind you that I'm a small business, but in person I can just organically talk to people and it'll naturally come up,
Mm,
right?
yeah.
And so yeah, it's something I'm working on.
So interesting. Yeah, it's like we have a lot of similar experiences with social anxiety, but then some converse ones as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty interesting. Well, we hope that you all can reflect a little bit about how social anxiety shows up or doesn't really show up
Yeah.
in your life. Maybe these are experiences that you don't really have a ton of experience with. And if that's you, then maybe you can teach us a thing or two. Reach out to us. We want to hear from you about ways in which you're navigating your own social anxiety, or if you feel like
Mhm.
you used to have it and you really don't have it anymore, you have some great tips and ideas that you want to share with us. We'd love to hear from you. Find us on IG, on Instagram at Anxiety Warriors Podcast. Shoot us an email, anxietywarriorspodcast@gmail.com. And tell us about it. Tell us about how it's going for you. Or if you heard us say something that resonated with you, make us feel safe and soothed about it too.
Yes.
Tell us. I hear you, Abby and Margot. I
I go
agree,
to the
right?
pets too. I find the cute puppy.
And the cute kids and yeah.
Yeah.
So we have another double Mabby Abago. We
Albergo.
haven't decided what our like celebrity couple mashup name is yet for the podcast world, but we have another both of us win of the week.
Yeah. Woo. I guess I'm telling it, huh?
Tell it, girl.
We received our first audio message from a listener.
Woo!
And yeah, so if y'all didn't know, you can leave us messages on Anchor, and I'm pretty sure on Apple too. It allows you to leave us a voice message as well. So someone from overseas sent us a message saying that they found our podcast and listened to the one with Raina Texler talking about teaching during the pandemic. And this person is also an educator and was teaching during the pandemic, really enjoyed the podcast, and then felt compelled to leave us a voice message and say that they were going to listen to more of our episodes. And that just like rocked our world. We were
Yes.
like dancing, replaying it
Yes.
over and over again, like so excited that this podcast is reaching people in other countries.
Across the pond. Yeah, she had a lovely accent. She didn't say where she was from, but oh my gosh, like you said, we were over the moon excited, just like nerding out on, we got our
Mm-hmm.
first voice message and it was a positive one, which is always nice. And she loved our episode with Raina and decided she wanted to listen to more. And that just warmed our anxious hearts so
Yeah.
much. So thank you, lovely listener. And thank you to all of you amazing warriors out there listening right now. We love you so much. We so appreciate hearing from you and you tuning in every week. And if you haven't yet and you're enjoying the podcast, please head on over to Apple Podcasts and give us that 5-star rating so more warriors around the world, literally around the world, can find our podcast, can join our Anxiety Warrior family. So we can
Yes.
keep growing and learning and exploring what it means to be human together.
Yes. And you can leave a voice memo too. And we'll talk
Yes.
about you.
Yeah. I mean, feel free to like, maybe we're even going to play some of these voice memos if you tell us we can. That'd be really cool to be able to do.
Yes. Yes. So thank you all so much for going on this journey with us. We are so grateful for you all to be here with us.
We love you, warriors. Till next time.